USTA.com.
Welcome to this week's episode of Here They Come. I'm Paul Ramlow.
And I'm Kate Lockhart.
Kate, we had the first major race for 3-year-old Pacers over the past weekend at the Meadowlands as Rock and Roll Heaven won the $220,000 Berries Creek Final. Rock and Roll Heaven pulled away and held off a late rally by Fred and Ginger for a 1 1/4 length tally in 1:52, with Canadian sensation Kyle Major hanging on for third.
Yeah, it's interesting, Paul. Rock and Roll Heaven, who's trained by Bruce Saunders, had a little bit of a problem with equipment in his elimination. He had some trouble with his earplugs, and they made a couple of changes for this race as well, adjusting his head pole. It seems as if it worked out pretty well. They said there were still some issues with steering, but the wind was so incredible that night that they're pretty confident that's what contributed to the issues, and think they have the horse sorted out going forward. So it'll be great to see how he performs the rest of the year.
Yeah, Rock and Roll Heaven was one of the top 2-year-olds in the sport last year. He won 4 out of 9 starts and never missed the board. And he certainly is among the morning line favorites for some of the major stakes throughout this summer of 2010.
Well, earlier on Saturday, Paul, Flex the Muscle took the Dexter Cup at Freehold Raceway. Flex the Muscle is one of the horses trained by Ray Schnicker. He had 3 horses in the race. And he won easily, sitting a pocket trip for David Miller.
Right, Kate. Flex the Muscle sat on the back of his stablemate Shaka's back until the field reached the stretch and then passed on the outside for the win. Flex the Muscle, who's a son of 1998 Hambletonian winner Muscles Yankee, will now stay in the state of New Jersey as he heads to the New Jersey Sire Stakes at the Meadowlands. Meanwhile, Shaka's back heads to New York to Vernon Downs for the Empire Breeders' Classic. So the 3-year-old trotters have hit the track now, and a lot of these stakes races now lead up to the Hambletonian in early August.
Speaking of the Hambletonian, this week's interview segment features Greg Peck, trainer of last year's Hambletonian champion, Muscle Hill, and also trainer of one of the favorites for this year's race, Holiday Road.
So, Greg, what's going on with you? How's life? Have you been to see Muscle Hill?
I have been to see him, and he looks good, and they do a wonderful job, Laura Young and her staff. And funny, Sylvia, that looked after him, mentioned to me yesterday that he's getting fat, but he's a great breeder, too. But to know Mr. Loveland, I'm not surprised. They say that he's the same in the breeding shed, because it was funny. He was never a horse around the barn who bothered with the girls, but they say now he is as professional in the breeding shed as he was on the racetrack, so that's nice.
What's it like now? I mean, it must have been pretty exciting last year to start at this time of year, the stake season getting started, knowing you had him in the barn. What's it like for you now?
Well, and I said that last year on several occasions. People said, do you mind the pressure? I said, no, pressure is not having one like that. So, with this year, I'm hoping on Holiday Road, who was very impressive in his Peter Houghton victory last year, but he didn't end up the season well, but he seems to be coming back good now. So let's just see what happens, but I'm hopeful that he would be the one.
How many horses do you have now?
About 25, and that's really about what I've had most of the winter. Yeah, pretty well.
Anybody else standing out besides Holiday Road?
I have a Yankee Glide and a real live woman, and her name is Red, White, and Bluestone, bred by Bluestone Farms, and she seems exceptional at this point. She's very fast. I trained the mother. The mother was the best mare in Ontario until she got run into and her tendon cut, and she never raced again, and this is the first foal. So I knew that going in that this filly would be talented, and she is.
I have a question from Raymond Morris. He wrote in and wanted to know if you had any regret on not pushing Muscle Hill to the limit before he was retired to see just how fast he was, being that there's a good chance he was a once-in-a-lifetime kind of horse in your stable.
Well, Raymond, it's a good question. There's no doubt about it, and I don't know that I've really been asked, but I will say this, is that I have said that I'm not disappointed over it. I'll tell you why. I say this. Never has a horse of either gender or either gait that I know of, that I can remember in my memory, that won that often, that easily. He was never pressed, so you couldn't even say, well, one day he tried to go for the speed record and he didn't do it. No, Brian presented him the way I liked as a champion should. He would go under the wire, basically under wraps, after maybe 2 light taps mid-stretch, and that was it. And I do feel, I know in my heart, Hambletonian day, he could have done at least 49, maybe 48. So I look at it that way, that I would rather that he always had something in reserve, and he stopped that way, that he stopped probably fresher than any champion that there's ever been.
And how is your family?
Family is good, yeah, and the horse business again is demanding time-wise and everything, but if we keep coming up with good horses, it will be rewarding, that's for sure.
Absolutely. Well, Greg, I can't thank you enough for your time, and we certainly wish you the best of luck going through 2010 here.
Thank you, Nicole.
Thanks a lot, Greg and Nikki. Kate, news out of Massachusetts earlier this week. A barn fire at Plainridge Racecourse last Sunday averted disaster due to proper planning. The fire broke out in a tack stall at approximately 3 a.m. and immediately tripped an alarm at the Plainville Fire Station. Thanks to that quick response, the roughly 40 horses that were housed in the stable, none of them suffered any serious injuries according to initial reports.
Yeah, it was interesting to hear from Plainridge General Manager Steve O'Toole that the horses, while it seems as if none of them are injured, they are going to keep them out of the races just to make sure that everything's okay. There was a lot of smoke. But it sounds like it's the sprinkler system here that really stepped in and kept the fire at bay until the fire department could get there and do their job. So it's nice to hear that that worked out as they would have hoped and that they were able to avert disaster.
And in Pennsylvania, Kate, there's a cross-breed effort to present the racetrack as a fun place to go for younger adults. All part of the Track Pack initiative includes a website and social networking.
Yeah, Paul, this was brought to my attention from the View from the Grandstand blog, and it's fascinating to see what Track Pack PA, which specifically targets younger people trying to get them to the track, what they've come up with to try to promote racing. They've got a great video now. It's a little commercial that they've put together. It kind of pokes fun at the notion of giveaways at the track. And it'll be great to see if this is able to go viral, if they're able to take advantage of their social networking and use of the media that they've been employing throughout their initiative to get more younger folks at the racetracks.
Now it's time for this week's episode of the Hollywood Minute with Bob Hollywood Heyden and Nicole Kraft, brought to you by Back to the Track. Visit the website backtothetrack.ustrotting.com for more information on the important weekend of racing in August.
Hey, Holly, I don't know if I mentioned to you, we're doing a story on shark gesture for the July issue. Had a great talk with Larry Remen and his connections. He's certainly come back better than I think anybody could have expected.
Yeah, and it's really tough to win a stakes final at the Meadowlands in back-to-back years. So looking back through history, it's a very, very short list. Boulder Creek did it here in the Breeders' Crown a couple of years in a row. Red Bowtie in 98, 99 dominated. Mr. Big a couple of years ago. And Ball and Chain, the only graduate back-to-back winner. But it's a very tough thing that Shark Gesture tries to defend his title in the graduate and later on in the Horton final. So he's 7 years old. He's the oldest horse in the race. He's about to become the fifth son of Cam's car chart, hit $2 million. The only sire who's got more than that is his own sire, Cam Feller, with 6. So it's a great breed, tough horse. He's come back from a short stud career, and he's looking probably better than ever right now. Shark Gesture and George Brennan will try to win it this year. Last year, Tim Tetrick, you might remember, drove Shark Gesture. So George Brennan, our leading driver, fittingly, in our richest race so far this year for the older horses, is driving the horse to beat in the graduate final on Saturday.
You know, you mentioned some more mature drivers with Timmy and George. God, I've seen a lot of young guys coming out the Meadowlands, though, recently.
Yeah, I tell you what, we had a very unusual situation where the last race on Saturday and the first race on Sunday won by teenage drivers. Montrell Teague, George Teague's son, won the finale of Mr. Apples on Saturday night. He was actually only $7 and change, the second choice. And then fast forward to the first on Sunday afternoon, Mother's Day, and 17-year-old Corey Stratton, Jordan's younger brother, wins his first race at the Meadowlands, 17 years old. That's the same age that Kevin Lair was back in '86, only a year off our all-time record set by Susan Looney back in '84 at age 16. So Montrell Teague and Corey Stratton winning back-to-back races at the Meadowlands as teenagers, very tough to do and a good sign, and hopefully we'll be seeing and hearing a lot more from those two in the future.
You said it. Have a great day, Holly.
Okay.
Thanks, Bob and Nikki. There was more action this weekend from the older trotters, Paul, as Lucky Jim held on in the Cutler Prep to defeat Arch Madness.
That's right, Kate. Lucky Jim will headline the field in the final this weekend for the Cutler Memorial. This will be his last North American start before he heads over to Europe for the Elite Lop in Sweden on Sunday, May 30th. His chief rival from earlier this year, Enough Talk, is already over in Europe as he will be taking part in the Oslo Grand Prix in Norway this Sunday. Unfortunately, he will have to start from post 10 in a 10-horse field for driver Luke Willett. Hopefully, we'll get to see enough talk and Lucky Jim hook up in that elite lop at the end of May.
Just a note to our loyal listeners, episodes of Here They Come will now be released on Wednesdays. And why is that, Paul?
Because on Fridays, the return of Ion Harness Racing with John Pavlak debuts this week, and that'll air in our Friday time slot every week. Be sure to look for those episodes at ustrotting.com.
Well, that wraps up another episode of Here They Come. I'd like to thank Greg Peck, Bob Hollywood Heyden, Nicole Kraft, and our producer, Rich Johnston. I'm Kate Lockhart.
And I'm Paul Ramlow.
And we'll see you next week on Wednesday for another episode of Here They Come.